They told the government I was dead. That's what the clerk at the post office said to me, as if it were a casual weather update. She didn't even look up at first, just kept scanning her screen, chewing on her lip, tapping the keyboard with those long pink nails. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but our system says the recipient is deceased." It took me a moment to respond. At 78, I don't always hear things the first time, but I heard that just fine. "Deceased?" I repeated, blinking behind my glasses. "What did you just say?" Now she looked at me, a flicker of doubt passing over her face. "That's what it says here." She leaned in toward the screen, squinting. "Nora Mason. Date of birth July 3rd, 1947. Status, deceased. Records updated 3 months ago." She looked up again, more uncertain now. I was standing in front of her, breathing, clutching the little yellow delivery slip that said I had a registered envelope waiting, probably my monthly benefit. The only regular thing left in my life, aside from tea at 6 p.m. "I'm right here," I said quietly. "You can see that, can't you?" She looked around, like maybe there was a supervisor nearby who could intervene, but it was just the two of us and the hum of a tired ceiling fan. "Yeah, I mean, obviously you're alive. I don't know how this could happen." She didn't need to know. I already had a few guesses. The clerk gave me the envelope anyway. Maybe out of sympathy, maybe because she didn't want to argue with an old woman in orthopedic shoes. But she added, "You should really go to the benefits office and sort this out. If they think you're dead, they'll stop sending these." Too late, I thought. The stamps were old. The envelope had been rerouted, returned, then forwarded again. It had my name on it, but the return address was one I didn't recognize. I walked out into the heat of the day, clutching that envelope like a lifeline. Across the street, a school bus squealed to a halt. Children burst out laughing. I stood there, invisible. Someone had declared me dead, not metaphorically, not like we never hear from her anymore, or she might as well be gone. No, officially, legally, on paper, dead. And if they had done that, what else had they done? I walked the half-mile back to my little rented bungalow on Sandalwood Drive, the same street I'd lived on since 1986. My knees hurt, but I didn't rush. Let the truth settle in slowly. Let it sting. The wind had knocked over my recycling bin again. No one had picked it up in 2 weeks. The landlord said he'd fix the step by the porch, but of course he hadn't. One day I'd trip and really give them something to declare. Inside, it was as I'd left it. Quiet, clean, old. The photos on the shelf watched me silently. My late husband Arthur in his uniform, my daughter Marion in pigtails, my grandson Dylan at 6, grinning in a Halloween cape. He's 15 now, hasn't visited in over a year. I sank into my chair and tore open the envelope. It wasn't a check. It was a form letter from the Social Benefits Administration, addressed not to me, but to the estate of Nora Mason. "We regret to inform you that benefits have been terminated effective March 1st, due to notification of death. Should you wish to appeal this decision, please submit Form SSA 571 along with certified proof of error." Notification of death. Someone had filled out that form. Someone had submitted a death certificate. That didn't happen by accident. I reached for the drawer where I kept my papers. The file with my birth certificate, my last benefit stubs, the insurance policy Arthur left me, all untouched, all correct. And yet, somewhere, someone had rewritten the end of my story. My phone buzzed on the table. One of those spam calls again, probably. No one I cared about ever called anymore. I picked it up anyway. It was Dylan. "Grandma?" he said. His voice was deeper than I remembered. You okay? I swallowed. I just found out I died, I said. Silence. What? They told the government I died, so they could keep my checks. I paused. I think your mother had something to do with it. He didn't answer. Then finally, I don't know anything about that. I swear. I believed him. I really did. But I didn't believe Marion. Not for 1 second. I hung up before he could say more. Then I reached for my old address book. If they wanted me gone, officially erased, they were about to find out how wrong they were. Because I was still here. And I was angry. The house was too quiet. It always was these days, but now it felt different. Not peaceful, hollow. Like something had been taken. Something final. I put the kettle on, out of habit more than anything. Tea fixes nothing, but it helps you sit with your thoughts. And mine were piling up like mail I hadn't asked for. The form letter lay open on the table, next to the envelope with the wrong return address. The estate of Nora Mason. They didn't even have the decency to double-check. Just processed me out like an expired membership. I stared at the curtains fluttering in the breeze. They were Arthur's favorite. Sun-bleached now, but still holding on. He'd hung them the year we moved in, when Marion was 12. She used to sit under them reading those horse books, legs swinging, always barefoot. I used to think we were close. She's 48 now. Lives 2 towns over, in a modern beige place with an HOA and 3 bathrooms. When Arthur died, she cried at the funeral. She held my hand. Then slowly, she stopped visiting. At first it was Dylan's school, then her work, then nothing. It didn't happen all at once. That's the worst part. Estrangement doesn't announce itself like a breakup. It trickles in. A missed birthday. A Christmas card that never comes. A voice that sounds more and more like a stranger. Still, I sent cards. I baked Dylan's favorite lemon bars every Easter. I even wrote Marion into my will. A dead woman's will now. I opened the kitchen drawer, the one with the rubber bands and mystery keys, and found the little black notebook I used to track bills. I flipped past grocery lists and notes to myself until I found the section I needed. Assistance to Marion, ongoing. $800 for Dylan's braces. $4,500 toward their car when Marion said theirs gave out. $200 for school supplies, though I suspected that meant a new iPad. I never said no. Not once. Not when Arthur was alive, and not after. We didn't have much, but we had enough. And I thought, well, I thought they needed me. I thought they loved me. I thought wrong. My tea had gone cold, untouched. I poured it out and opened the back door. The garden looked tired. The weeds were winning again. That was when I saw him. Frank, my neighbor from 2 doors down, hunched over his roses. He waved. "Morning, Nora," he called. "Afternoon," I corrected gently. He chuckled. "Time's slippery these days." "Do you still do odd jobs?" I asked, stepping onto the porch. "Lawn work? Maybe something with a hammer?" He stood up, wiped his hands on his jeans. "Sure. What's wrong?" "I'm not dead," I said. Frank blinked. What?" "I need someone to come with me to the benefits office tomorrow, as a witness, just in case they don't believe I exist." "Jesus, Nora, what happened?" I told him. Not all of it. Not Marion, not the money, but enough. That someone filed false paperwork. That I'd been cut off. That I needed to prove I was still breathing. Frank's face darkened. "That's fraud," he said. "That's serious." "Tell that to the system," I muttered. "They haven't even asked for proof." He nodded. "I'll drive you." "Thank you." That night, I barely slept. I kept hearing those words again. Status. Deceased. Like I was just a line item. Deleted. I sat up around 3 a.m., pulled on my robe, and walked to the little writing desk by the front window. It still smelled faintly of cedar and mothballs. I opened a fresh page in the notebook. At the top I wrote, "Things I know for sure. I am alive. Someone is lying. I will not be erased." The wind picked up outside. A branch tapped against the glass like a finger. They thought they'd silenced me, that no one would notice, that I'd sit quietly in my little house until the paperwork became truth. But I raised a child once. I buried a husband. I built a life from scratch. And I wasn't about to let anyone, not even my own daughter, bury me before my time. The benefits office sat in a squat gray building behind the supermarket, the kind of place that looked tired even at 9 in the morning. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. A line of plastic chairs lined the wall, filled with people who looked like they'd been waiting for something more than just paperwork. Maybe dignity, maybe clarity, maybe hope. Frank sat beside me, reading an old fishing magazine. He hadn't asked questions on the drive over, just nodded when I told him what I needed. A quiet presence, someone with a name and an ID who could say, "Yes, I know this woman. She's not a ghost." When my number was called, B74, I stood carefully, knees stiff, and walked to the window. The clerk was young, maybe 25, with heavy eyeliner and a badge that said Chantel. "Hi there," she said, not looking up yet. "What can I help you with today?" "I need to correct a record," I said. "Someone filed a death certificate in my name, but I'm standing here, so that seems premature." Her fingers paused over the keyboard. She glanced at me, then back at the screen. "Name? Nora Mason, July 3rd, 1947. Clicking. Typing. A faint crease appeared between her brows. "Huh?" she said. "Okay. Yeah, it says you were declared deceased on February 18th. Certificate on file. Who submitted it?" Chantel squinted. "We don't usually have that info. Let me... Hang on." She tapped and scrolled, then turned the monitor slightly away from me. Subtle, but I noticed. "I'm gonna need to bring a supervisor," she said. "Just a sec." As she disappeared into a back room, I looked around. The waiting room smelled faintly of stale air and hand sanitizer. A toddler was crying 2 chairs down. Frank looked up, sensing something in my face. "You okay?" "No," I said, "but I will be." The supervisor was an older woman with a short silver bob and a clipped way of speaking. "Mrs. Mason," she began, "we've reviewed your case. It appears a family member submitted documentation to the Department of Vital Records. That was cross-referenced here, and your benefits were terminated in accordance with that report." "So," I said slowly, "you just took someone's word for it?" "There was a signed death certificate. Can I see it?" She hesitated. "It's not standard procedure to share internal documentation." "I'm not standard procedure," I said, louder than I meant to. "I'm the one they declared dead." Frank shifted in his chair. "I can vouch for her," he added. "Known her 20 years. She's very much alive." The supervisor gave him a tight nod, then looked back at me. "You'll need to fill out Form 862A, submit proof of life, government ID, utility bill, that sort of thing. And then we can initiate a review. It may take several weeks." "Meanwhile, what? No benefits?" She folded her hands. "Until the status is corrected, the account remains suspended." "And the checks that did go out? Who cashed them?" She hesitated. "That may require a separate investigation." I knew then. She knew more than she was saying. Maybe not the full picture, but enough to be cautious. Enough to know someone had stepped across a line. I want a copy of the death certificate, I said. She sighed. You'll need to request it from Vital Records. I smiled, the kind of smile that didn't reach my eyes. Then I'll do that. Frank and I left in silence. The sky had turned overcast, heavy with the smell of coming rain. They're stonewalling, he said finally, unlocking the truck. Yes, I agreed. But I'm used to that. He glanced at me as I buckled in. What are you going to do? I looked out the window as we pulled onto the street. I'm going to find out who signed my death certificate, I said. And then I'm going to remind them what it means to be alive. At home, I sat at the kitchen table and called the Department of Vital Records. The hold music was cheerful in a way that felt offensive. When someone finally answered, I was polite but firm. I gave my name, my birthday, my old Social Security number. Then I said, I'd like a certified copy of the death certificate issued in my name. The clerk paused. Ma'am, are you the next of kin? No, I said. I'm the deceased. It arrived 3 days later in a plain manila envelope, the death certificate. I opened it with shaking hands, careful not to rip the edges. There it was. Nora Evelyn Mason, female, born July 3, 1947, died February 18, 2025. Cause of death, complications from pneumonia. I stared at the words like they belonged to someone else. I hadn't had a cold in 2 years. My last checkup was fine, blood pressure steady, cholesterol decent. If I'd died from pneumonia, I surely would have noticed. The certificate was signed, typed, but with a signature at the bottom. Informant, Marion L. Whitaker, my daughter. My own flesh and blood had signed a legal document saying I was dead, had stood in some office, lied through her teeth, and submitted it. I looked at the neat cursive below her name, the same handwriting she used to scrawl on her middle school notebooks, all loops and swirls. There was no mistaking it. I pressed the paper flat against the table and sat very still. I didn't cry, not this time. Instead, I stood, walked to the hallway closet, and pulled out the old fireproof box where Arthur kept our legal documents. Inside were insurance records, our original marriage license, the deed to the little plot in Glenwood Cemetery we bought just in case, and the will we updated 20 years ago, back when Marion still called every Sunday. Her name was in that will. So was Dylan's. But my name, the one she buried, was on everything else. I pulled out the envelope labeled POA, Marion, Power of Attorney. I'd signed it after my hip surgery 3 years back, just in case something happened while I was in recovery. It's temporary, she said then, just until you're back on your feet. I never revoked it. Stupid, lazy, trusting. Pick your word. And now she had used it to write me off. Frank came by with groceries around noon. He knocked like always, 2 short, 1 long, and let himself in without waiting. Brought you eggs and that rye bread you like, he said. Then, seeing my face, what happened? I handed him the certificate. He read it twice, his jaw clenched. She filed this? I nodded. Jesus, Nora. I think it's fraud, I said quietly. Deliberate fraud. She used my power of attorney to file a death certificate, reroute my checks, and God knows what else. Frank sat heavily at the table. You need a lawyer. I need a lawyer, a banker, and a damn priest. He chuckled, but it faded quickly. You gonna confront her? Not yet, I said. First, I want to see how far she went, what she took, what she touched. That afternoon, I called my bank. The voice on the line was cheerful. Thank you for calling Meadow Valley Credit Union. This is Karen speaking. How may I help you? Hi, Karen. I need to check the activity on my account. Certainly, Mrs. Mason. May I have your member ID? I gave it. Silence. It appears your account is listed as closed. Closed? Yes, ma'am. It was closed on February 27th. Funds were transferred to a joint account under the names Marion Whitaker and Dylan Whitaker. The room spun for a second. I gripped the edge of the table. Was that done using power of attorney? Yes, ma'am. We have the document on file. And no one called me? No one checked? I'm so sorry, ma'am, but since you were reported deceased, we followed protocol. I hung up without another word. Everything. The savings Arthur and I built for 40 years, the small inheritance from my sister in Vermont, the life insurance payout after Arthur died, all of it had been siphoned off. Gone. I didn't sleep that night. Not really. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling fan turning slowly, until morning came, and I wasn't sure if I'd even blinked. By sunrise, I had made a decision. They thought I was too old to notice, too soft to fight, too dead to care. They were wrong. The next morning, I dressed like I was going to church. Not because I had to, just because I wanted to feel like myself. Not someone forgotten, not someone erased. Myself. A navy blouse, the pearl earrings Arthur gave me on our 35th anniversary, and my low black heels. I hadn't worn them in years, but they still fit. Some things still hold their shape, even after being ignored. I packed a folder, the forged death certificate, the bank's letter, the expired benefit statements. I added my old power of attorney too, the one with Marion's name in the witness box and my tired signature on the bottom. Then I called a cab. Frank offered to drive again, but I needed to do this part alone. The lawyer's office was in a brownstone near the courthouse. Small brass plaque, wooden steps, the kind of place that still smelled like legal pads and ink. Mrs. Mason? The receptionist asked, looking over her glasses. You're here to see Mr. Harriman? Yes. He's expecting you. Please, this way. I'd found his name in Arthur's old address book. Joseph Harriman. He'd handled our estate planning long ago, when Marion still lived at home and thought macaroni casserole was a fancy meal. Back then, he was new in town. Now he had white hair and the sort of calm face that doesn't flinch at bad news. He stood when I entered. Nora, good heavens, it's been years. Too many, I said. Thank you for seeing me on short notice. Always, he said, gesturing to the chair across from his desk. What brings you in? I handed him the folder. He read slowly, methodically, nodding now and then. When he got to the death certificate, he stopped. She filed this? He asked. Yes. And the bank statements? The transfers? All using the POA? I nodded. He leaned back, took off his glasses and pinched the bridge of his nose. Well, he said softly, that's not just unethical. It's criminal. I figured. What do you want to do, Nora? It was the first time someone had asked me that since Arthur died. What I wanted? I answered without hesitation. I want to revoke the power of attorney. I want to reopen my accounts in my name only. And I want to press charges if there's a case. There is, he said. Absolutely. He began to outline the steps. Letters to financial institutions, a notarized affidavit, a court petition to reverse the declaration of death. It would take time, he warned. Bureaucracy always did. But he looked at me differently than the others had. Not like I was fragile, but like I was formidable. You'll need a statement, he said, about your relationship with your daughter, when it changed, why she might have done this. She got tired of waiting, I said quietly. Waiting? For me to go. He didn't write that down, but I saw him pause. We spent an hour reviewing forms. He had a paralegal start drafting revocation documents. He gave me a list of agencies to contact: Social Security, DMV, Medicare. Every place that had me listed as dead. It would take time, he said again, but it could be done. When I left, I felt steadier. Alive. I stopped by the diner near the courthouse afterward, sat at the window, ordered coffee and toast. The waitress didn't know me, didn't care, didn't ask questions. That felt good. Halfway through my toast, I pulled out a pen and a napkin. I wrote just 2 lines. You buried me with a signature. Now watch me dig myself out. I folded it and tucked it into my pocket. It wasn't a letter, not yet. But one day, it would be. The Social Security office smelled like plastic and disappointment. A man in front of me was arguing about a lost ID. A woman behind me kept sighing like it would change the speed of the line. I sat with my folder on my lap, spine straight, eyes ahead. Frank had offered again to come with me, but I told him no. Some fights you fight alone. When they called my number, G142, I stood, smoothed the front of my blouse, and walked to the window. The clerk was a middle-aged woman with dark circles under her eyes and a nameplate that said Yvette. She looked like someone who'd seen everything and didn't like any of it. Name? She asked, not unkindly. Nora Mason? She typed, squinted, then stopped. You were declared deceased. So I've been told, I said. But as you can see, that was a little premature. Yvette glanced up. Her expression didn't change, but something shifted behind her eyes. A flicker of sympathy, maybe, or recognition. Like she'd heard worse, but not by much. You got ID? I handed her my license, utility bill, a notarized affidavit from Mr. Harriman declaring I was legally and physically alive, and a fresh photograph just to be thorough. She examined them one by one, then turned to her screen. You understand this might take time. Yes. And you might not get back pay for the months marked deceased. Not without an appeal. I'm appealing everything, I said. She nodded slowly. I'll escalate this. You'll get a letter in 10 to 14 business days confirming the case is under review. What about my status? She clicked a few more times. I'm updating the system now, but other agencies pull from this database. Might take a while to filter through. I can wait, I said. I've waited this long. When I left the building, it had started to drizzle. The streets were slick and quiet. I walked to the bus stop, sat on the damp bench, and stared at nothing for a long time. The rain made everything smell like metal and old dirt. At home, there was a message on my machine, a voice I hadn't heard in months. Hi, Mom. It's Marion. She didn't sound like herself. She sounded cautious. Flat. I think we should talk. I'm not sure what's going on, but I heard from the bank. Some things changed. Just call me, okay? She didn't say, I miss you. She didn't say, I'm sorry. Just, things changed. I didn't call her back. Instead, I poured myself a cup of tea and walked around the house, turning on every light. Then I sat at the kitchen table with the envelope of bank statements I'd requested last week. There it was. My money. Or what used to be mine. Mortgage payments on our house. A tuition payment labeled D.W. Whitaker. Spa charges, restaurant bills, a weekend rental on the coast. Over $48,000 moved from my accounts in 3 months, all under the guise of grief. They didn't just pretend I was gone, they celebrated it. I stared at the line item for a luxury bedding store, 1,379s. For sheets. I hadn't spent that much on a mattress in my life. When Dylan was little, he once cried because he thought I'd gone missing in the grocery store. I found him sobbing near the canned goods, his little fists clenched, calling my name. I wonder now what he'd do if I truly disappeared. If the lies had worked. Would he have cried? Or would he have just gone shopping? I folded the statements back into the envelope and placed it beside my tea. This wasn't over. They hadn't just robbed me. They'd rewritten me. And now I was writing myself back in. The hardest part wasn't proving I was alive. It was proving I used to matter. Banks and agencies have rules, systems, forms. But people? People forget. They move on. They build new stories where you no longer appear. And in Marion's new life, I was already gone. I learned that the next morning when I called the electric company. "Yes, Mrs. Mason," the man said after verifying my info. "Your service was transferred 3 months ago. New account holder, Marion Whitaker." "I never requested that," I said. "I live here. I've lived here for 39 years. "I understand. But we received a notarized letter and a death certificate. It's standard procedure." Standard. As if my erasure had been processed like a routine address change. I hung up and made a list of all the utilities in the house. Electric, water, gas, trash collection, phone line. All of them were now in Marion's name, quietly shifted under the same justification: deceased. She hadn't just buried me. She'd started taking my house. My landlord, Mr. Kohler, lived in a duplex across town. We hadn't spoken in years. I mailed checks. He cashed them, and that was it. But now I needed answers. He was surprised to see me. "Mrs. Mason," he exclaimed. "Well, I heard—" "What exactly did you hear?" I asked, stepping onto his porch. "That you'd passed," he said slowly. "Your daughter said she'd be handling everything now. She gave me her contact info. Payments have been on time, so I didn't—" "She forged a death certificate," I said calmly. "I'm very much alive." Mr. Kohler paled. "Oh my God. She's been paying with my money. From my closed accounts." He ran a hand through his thinning hair. I'm so sorry, Mrs. Mason. I had no idea. I need a copy of the lease, anything she signed, anything she changed." "Of course," he said, stepping inside. "Come in, please." The documents showed Marion had submitted a request to convert the lease into her name, citing death of the original tenant as the reason. There was a typed letter, polite, efficient, distant. I read it once, then again. There was a line that caught in my throat. "We'll be clearing the house by summer." Clearing it, as if it were a storage unit, or an old attic, or a tomb. I thanked Mr. Kohler and told him not to speak to her again until my lawyer contacted him. He nodded quickly, clearly shaken. He offered a ride home. I declined. I needed the walk. On the way, I passed a florist. Not Marion's usual place. This one was run by a woman named Lucy, who'd once hired Dylan for a summer job when he was 15. I hadn't seen her in years. "Mrs. Mason?" she said, stepping out from behind the counter. "I get that a lot," I said. "Apparently I've been busy haunting people." She looked at me for a long moment. Then she stepped forward and hugged me. It wasn't much, just a few seconds, but it was the first real contact I'd had in weeks. "You want some tea?" she asked. I nodded. We sat in the little back room of the shop, surrounded by buckets of roses and carnations, and I told her everything. Not the legal parts, not the bank forms or the court filings, just the plain truth. My daughter had pretended I was dead. Taken everything. Left me alone in the shell of my life. "I'm so sorry," Lucy said. "I remember when Marion used to bring Dylan in here. She always seemed ambitious, polished. But cold? She wasn't always like that, I said softly. She used to braid my hair when I was sick. She used to cry when I cried. So what changed? I stared into my tea. She got used to me being small. Lucy didn't reply. She just reached over and squeezed my hand. That night, I stood in my living room and looked at everything Marion had planned to clear. The armchair with the worn cushion where Arthur used to nap. The bookshelf with his favorite mystery novels. The framed cross-stitch from my sister's last Christmas. They weren't things. They were proof. Proof that I had lived, and I wasn't going to let anyone sweep that away. Joseph Harriman's office smelled like lemon polish and determination. He looked up from his desk when I walked in, already setting aside a folder. "I was just about to call you," he said. "There's progress." He gestured for me to sit, and I did, carefully setting my own growing folder beside me. "I've submitted the revocation of the power of attorney," he said. "We also filed a motion with the probate court to reverse the legal presumption of death. Normally, that takes months, but given the evidence, they've agreed to expedite." He tapped the folder. "Your identity, Nora, will be legally reinstated within 10 business days." It should have felt like a victory. Instead, I felt tired. "All right," I said. "What happens after?" "Well, we notify the bank, the landlord, the benefits office. They'll all be obligated to update their records, and we can begin pressing charges." He hesitated. "Have you decided how far you want to go?" I looked at him. His face was kind, patient, but behind it was the same question everyone had danced around. "Do you really want to do this to your own daughter?" "I want it on record," I said. "I want them to know it wasn't just a mistake. I want the law to recognize it for what it is: fraud, exploitation, theft." He nodded. "Then we'll proceed." "I also want to change my will." His eyebrows rose. "Understood." I pulled out a new sheet of paper. "My assets, what's left of them, go to no one who declared me dead. Marion is out. So is Dylan." He blinked. "Dylan too?" I paused. Then I shook my head. No, not yet. He's still a boy in this. I don't know if he knew. But if I learn he did, he's out too. I'll draft a conditional clause." I nodded. There was something final about those words. As if I'd just stepped through a door I couldn't walk back through. And maybe I had. After I left Harriman's office, I walked to the library. I hadn't been in a long time, but the card still worked. The woman behind the counter, Marcy, who used to run the Tuesday knitting circle, recognized me. "Mrs. Mason, my God, we heard." "I know what you heard." She leaned forward. "So you're very much here, and not in the mood to be whispered about." She blushed, looked chastised. "Of course." "Can I help you find something?" I thought for a moment. Then I said, "I need books on elder fraud, identity recovery, and criminal misuse of power of attorney." She didn't ask more questions after that. I left with 4 thick books, a renewed sense of direction, and a fire in my chest I hadn't felt in years. When I got home, there was a voicemail from Dylan. "Grandma, hey, Mom's kind of freaking out. Said there's been some banking issues. She told me not to call you, but I don't know. This whole thing feels weird. Just, if you're okay, can you let me know?" It was the first time I heard doubt in his voice. I didn't call him back. Not yet. But I saved the message. Then I opened one of the library books and started reading. The introduction was simple. Most elder financial abuse is committed by family members. They count on silence. They count on shame. They count on you doing nothing. They'd made the wrong bet with me. The courthouse was colder than I remembered, or maybe I was just older now. Either way, the chill followed me into the hearing room. A plain space with beige walls, plastic chairs, and a worn wooden table where truths were supposed to be sorted from lies. Joseph Harriman sat beside me, calm as ever. He had prepared everything: documentation, statements, copies of every fraudulent action Marion had taken in my name. On the other side of the room sat a woman from the county registrar's office, representing the state. She wasn't the enemy. She was just the gatekeeper. But I could tell she didn't quite know what to do with me. A dead woman sitting upright in court. Petitioner seeks reversal of a wrongful death designation, the clerk read aloud. The judge, a pale man with droopy eyelids and a surprisingly kind voice, looked down from the bench. "Mrs. Mason," he said, "you've submitted proof of identity, medical affidavits, live testimony. Frankly, this is the most well-documented case of being not dead I've ever seen." A faint chuckle ran through the room. Even the registrar cracked a smile. "I'd laugh," I said, "if it hadn't taken 8 weeks to convince people I still existed." He nodded. "I read the file. This is disturbing." He turned to the registrar. "And the original certificate?" She slid a copy across the table. "Filed February 18th by the informant, Marion Whitaker, under the authority of power of attorney." "Which is now revoked," Harriman added. The judge studied the paper for a moment, then looked at me again. "Do you wish to make a statement, Mrs. Mason?" I stood. My knees ached, but my voice didn't waver. "My daughter declared me dead," I said. "Not because I was ill, not because she was grieving, but because I was inconvenient. Because she wanted what I had before I had the decency to stop breathing." The room was silent. She used that lie to drain my accounts, transfer my lease, take over my utilities, and erase me from the systems that once recognized I was here. She didn't just file a form, she made a choice. A long, deliberate choice. And I've spent every day since then proving something that should never have needed proof. I paused. I'm not here for pity. I'm here for my name back. The judge tapped his pen against the table. "Petition granted," he said. "Let the record show Nora Evelyn Mason is legally alive. Status to be restored across all state agencies within 5 business days." He looked up. "Welcome back, Mrs. Mason." I sat down slowly. My heart was steady, but my fingers were cold. Outside, Harriman smiled as we stepped into the sunshine. "That's one battle won." "One," I agreed. We walked a few steps in silence. "What now?" he asked. "I want to press charges," I said. "Let the DA see what she did." He nodded. "We'll submit everything, but be prepared. It may take time." "I've got time," I said. "And if I don't, I'll make noise until someone listens." Back home, the phone rang. It was Dylan. "Grandma?" His voice cracked. "Mom's freaking out. Says you went to court, that people are asking questions. She says you're trying to ruin her." "I'm not trying," I said. "I'm succeeding." Silence. Then, "Did she really do all that?" "She filed my death," I said. "You tell me, Dylan. What did you think happened when I stopped answering? When the checks kept coming?" He didn't speak. "Did you believe I was gone?" I asked softly. "I don't know," he whispered. "You do," I said. "You just didn't want to ask." Another silence. "I'm sorry." I didn't answer. Not because I didn't believe him, but because it was too soon to know if sorry would be enough. He added, "Can I come see you?" I hesitated. "Not yet." Then I hung up and stood by the window, watching the trees sway in the afternoon light. The world still moved, and I was still here to see it. She didn't expect me at the door. I could see it in her eyes the moment she opened it. A flicker of disbelief, then panic, then something harder to name. Not guilt, not fear, just the raw, stinging awareness of being caught. "Nora," Marion said, her voice thinner than I remembered. What are you doing here?" I didn't answer. I stood on the welcome mat of the very house my money helped buy. The white clapboard 2-story with the stone planters she never watered. A new car in the driveway, a hanging basket by the porch, all polished, all curated, all mine. She stepped back, hesitating. "You want to come in?" I walked in without asking. The inside was worse than I imagined. Not because it was messy. It wasn't. It was immaculate. Cold, pale, magazine perfect. But everywhere I looked, I saw something taken. The leather recliner from Arthur's den. My blue wool throw from the living room. Even the glass jar where I kept cinnamon sticks, now filled with lavender, sitting by a gas stove I'd never cooked on. She watched me, her arms crossed like she wasn't sure if she should defend herself or her furniture. "I didn't think you'd want any of that stuff," she said. "I just didn't want it to go to waste. It wasn't yours to take." "You were gone," she said sharply. "You weren't answering. The neighbors said you hadn't been outside in weeks." "You filed a death certificate," I said. "You told the government I was dead. You transferred my accounts. You rerouted my checks. You moved my lease, took my name off the records, and started cleaning out my house." Her mouth opened, closed, opened again. I didn't think it would go this far." "No," I said. "You thought it would go quietly." She walked to the kitchen, motioning for me to follow, as if the geography of countertops and coffee mugs could make this a normal conversation. "I was struggling, okay? Dylan's tuition, the mortgage. You had a choice," I said. "You had a dozen. You could have asked. You could have told the truth. But instead, you put a knife in my back and called it necessity." "I didn't know how to stop," she whispered. That I believed. We stood in silence, just the hum of the refrigerator between us. "Where is he?" I asked. "Dylan?" "At school," she said. "Why?" I shook my head. "He called me. He knows." Marion turned away, gripped the edge of the counter. Her knuckles were white. "I never meant to hurt you." "You buried me," I said. "You didn't just steal. You tried to erase me." And that was the truth that hung in the air between us, heavier than accusation, more permanent than disappointment. She turned to face me. "Are you going to press charges?" "I already have." She blinked. "I'm not here to ask your permission," I said. "I'm here to see what you did. With my eyes. In my time." She looked around. At the house, the things, the silence. And then she said it. "I was tired of waiting. It wasn't cruel. It wasn't shouted. It was just honest. Tired of waiting. For me to fade, to give, to leave." I nodded once. Then I walked to the front door, opened it, and stepped out onto the porch. The sky was overcast. The trees were still. And I felt light. Not because justice had come, but because I had finally stopped pretending she was someone she wasn't, and stopped pretending I was someone who deserved it. I didn't say a word when Dylan opened the door. He stood there in his wrinkled hoodie and college sweatpants, looking older than I remembered, but also younger, the way guilt can age you in one way and strip you down in another. "Grandma?" he said softly. I nodded. He stepped aside. The apartment smelled like instant noodles and detergent. Posters on the wall, a laundry basket in the corner. His life in pieces, like all student apartments. Half-built, still uncertain. "I didn't know you were coming," he said, fidgeting with the sleeve of his hoodie. "Mom didn't say—" "I didn't come to see her." He blinked. "She's not here." I know. He watched me take a seat on the edge of the worn futon, the kind that sags no matter how much you adjust the cushions. He sat across from me, elbows on his knees, head bowed like a boy waiting for detention. I didn't think you were really gone, he said after a moment. But Mom said, I don't know. She made it sound like maybe you were better off, that you didn't want anyone bothering you, that everything was taken care of. She told the state I was dead, I said. She took everything I had. His face tightened. She told me not to ask questions, he murmured. She said grief made people judge unfairly. I looked at him closely. And what do you think now? He met my eyes. I think I should have come to your house. I think I should have knocked on your door, no matter what she said. I didn't nod. I didn't forgive him. But I listened. He pulled something from his backpack, a small box wrapped in brown paper. I went by your house a few weeks ago, he said. I didn't knock. I just left this on the porch. Thought maybe you'd see it. I opened it slowly. Inside was a tiny ceramic frog, chipped, painted unevenly. A school project, years old. You used to keep this by the kitchen window, he said. Said it was your good luck charm. I remember. I found it in a box, he said, in Mom's garage. She was sorting what she called old clutter. He winced at his own words. I'm sorry, he whispered. The frog sat in my palm, warm from my skin. I don't know what to do, he added. I don't know how to fix it. You can't, I said. Some things stay broken. He swallowed. But you can stop pretending, I added. That's where it starts. He nodded, slowly. I never wanted her to do what she did, he said. But I didn't stop her either. And that's something you'll have to carry, I said. Silence fell again. Not cold, but still. He asked, Do you hate her? I don't know what I feel, I said. I used to love her so much I couldn't see who she'd become. And now? Now I see clearly. He looked down at his shoes. I want to see you again, he said, even if it's not the same. I stood slowly, setting the frog on his windowsill. We'll see, I said. As I walked to the door, he stood too, awkward, quiet. I'll call you, he said. If you do, I said, don't wait for me to die first. And then I left. The bank manager's office was brighter than I expected. Big windows, fresh flowers, a bowl of mints on the desk. The man behind it, Richard Burney, wore a sharp gray suit and a nervous smile. He stood when I entered, hand extended. Mrs. Mason, please, have a seat. I sat down, placing a fresh folder in front of me. I've received the court confirmation, he said. You are now legally reinstated in all systems. I'm truly sorry for everything that's happened. You approved the transfers, I said quietly. You let someone else drain over $70,000 from my accounts. He shifted. We acted based on documentation provided at the time, the death certificate, the power of attorney. That power of attorney is now null and void, I said. And I want every cent traced, every transaction, every account with my name on it or connected to it investigated. We've already begun the audit, he said. Some of the money was moved into a joint account with Ms. Whitaker's son. Some was used for direct purchases. We're filing a fraud report with our legal department and will assist law enforcement as needed. Good. I also understand you wish to open a new account? I slid a document across the desk. A trust, in the name of Eloise Mayton. He blinked. Eloise? A friend's granddaughter. She's studying social work. I've known her since she was born. She's not blood, which is probably why I still trust her. He took the paperwork, skimmed it. You're assigning her as beneficiary? Yes. And I want all future deposits redirected into that account. Pension, retirement fund, what's left of the savings. I can arrange that. I looked at him. Make sure no one touches it, ever again. No joint access, no requests, no substitutions. His nod was quick. Of course. I leaned back, watching the soft sunlight play across the polished wood of his desk. I used to come here once a month, I said. Sat right outside in the waiting chairs. I brought cookies sometimes. Marion always said the staff was so kind. She liked having her name on the statements. Richard didn't respond. I gave her too much, I said. And now I'm giving it to someone else. Not because they asked, but because they never tried to take. He looked almost ashamed. Is there anything else I can do? Call me when the paperwork's done, I said. That'll be enough. Back home, I opened the closet in the hallway and took out the old suitcase Arthur used for business trips. I hadn't touched it since he passed. Inside were all my papers now. The death certificate, stamped void, the court order, the audit reports, a copy of my new trust agreement. And on top, I placed the photo of Arthur and me from our 30th anniversary. The one where we're dancing in the backyard, barefoot on the grass. It wasn't a war chest, but it was proof. Proof I had fought. That night, I slept without locking the door. Not because I was careless, but because for the first time in a long time, I wasn't afraid someone would walk in and take what was mine. There wasn't much left, but what remained was truly mine again. It was Frank who brought me the newspaper. He didn't knock, just came in like he always did, holding the folded pages like they were hot to the touch. You need to see this, he said. I was in the kitchen, slicing pears. The knife paused midair. He laid the paper on the table, front page up. Local woman declared dead. Fights back. Wins case. There was a photo, too. A small one, grainy. Me, stepping out of the courthouse last week, eyes squinting at the sun, my cardigan catching in the wind. I read the first lines aloud. Nora Mason, 78, was legally declared dead earlier this year by her own daughter. Now she's alive and demanding justice. Frank sat down across from me. They interviewed someone at the courthouse, he said. A clerk, maybe. Didn't name you directly for quotes, but the story's clear enough. I kept reading. The case has drawn attention to a growing issue nationwide: financial exploitation of seniors by family members. Mason, a retired librarian, had her benefits terminated, bank accounts emptied, and home threatened, all based on a falsified death certificate submitted by her daughter, Marion Whitaker, under power of attorney. They thought I was gone, Mason said in court. But I was just quiet. There's a difference. I hadn't said those words, not quite like that. But I recognized the truth in them. They're asking for comment, Frank said. From you. I won't give it. You sure? I didn't do this to be in print. He nodded, but I couldn't deny what stirred in me, reading those lines. Not pride, not triumph. Something quieter, like being seen after standing in the shadows too long. The phone rang. Frank raised his eyebrows. You want me to? I'll answer. It was the newspaper. A reporter named Gina. She was polite, measured, clearly cautious not to sound like a vulture. I wanted to verify some facts, she said. Your reinstatement, the fraud case, the charges being considered, they're accurate. Would you be willing to speak on the record? No, I said, but I'll give you a message. She waited. Tell them I'm alive, I said. Tell them silence doesn't mean surrender. And tell them some women grow sharper with age, not softer. She paused, then said, May I print that? You already did, I said, and hung up. Later that afternoon, Frank came back with a second copy of the paper. "Thought you might want one that isn't wrinkled." I tucked it into the same folder with the court papers and the frog from Dylan. One day, someone might open that folder and wonder what kind of woman I was. They won't need to guess. They'll see what I did when they tried to erase me. And maybe, just maybe, they'll remember not to stay quiet. The charges were filed 2 weeks later. I didn't get a call from Marion, not a letter, not a knock at the door. But I didn't need one. I knew the moment I saw the envelope from the district attorney's office waiting in my mailbox. Frank was trimming hedges next door when I opened it. "Is that it?" he asked, wiping sweat from his brow. I nodded. "They're pursuing financial exploitation and identity fraud. 2 felonies, 1 misdemeanor." He whistled low. "She won't like that." "No," I said, "but I didn't like being dead." I sat on the porch and read the letter again. There was something formal, almost cold, about the way they listed it. The People versus Marion Whitaker. But it wasn't cold to me. It was personal. It always had been. They'd given her a court date, a hearing, and if it went to trial, the possibility of sentencing. She wouldn't see prison, not likely. But there would be a record, a mark, proof. I didn't feel vindicated. I felt sad. Sad that it came to this. Sad that the girl who once clutched my skirts during thunderstorms had become someone who could lie with such ease, who could bury me for a price. I made a pot of tea and sat with the quiet for a long time. Then I wrote her a letter. I didn't plan to send it, but I needed to write it. "Marion, you didn't just steal money. You stole the shape of my life. You stepped into rooms I built and claimed them. You took silence for weakness. You bet on my love lasting longer than your conscience. And maybe, in some ways, you were right. I gave more than I should have. Not because you asked, but because I wanted to believe. I wanted to believe you were still the girl who braided my hair and cried during sad movies. You're not, and I've accepted that. But here's what you didn't erase. I am still here, still standing, still breathing in this little house with its crooked step and yellow curtains. You cleared out drawers, but you didn't clear me. You never will. I hope you sit with what you did. I hope it keeps you awake sometimes, like it kept me awake for months. But more than that, I hope one day you tell the truth. Not to the court, not to me, to yourself. Because that will be the first honest thing in a very long time." I folded the letter and placed it in the back of my notebook. Then I went outside, watered the rose bush Arthur planted 30 years ago, and sat down on the steps. The breeze was warm. A robin picked at something near the sidewalk. And I let myself think, not about what was taken, but about what remained. My name, my story, my breath in the morning. That was enough. I didn't attend the hearing. Joseph went in my place, with a folder thick as a brick, bank records, affidavits, statements, timelines. He called me after it ended. "She entered a plea," he said. "No contest to the felony. Guilty to the misdemeanor. The court accepted it. What does that mean for her? No jail time, probation, restitution order. She'll have to repay a portion, not everything, but something." I nodded, though he couldn't see it. "She didn't speak in court," he added. "Not a word." That night, I sat at my kitchen table with the lamp low and the window open, letting in the summer air. I took out the old black notebook, the one I started months ago when I first found out I was deceased. The page titled, "Things I Know for Sure," was still there. I am alive. Someone is lying. I will not be erased. I added a fourth line. They were wrong about me. They thought I wouldn't fight. That age softened your spine. That love could be used like rope, to tie someone down, then walk away with their things. But I've learned this. Quiet is not the same as weak. Stillness is not surrender. The next morning, I took the bus into town. I walked to the post office where it all began, the place where a young clerk had looked at a screen and told me I was dead. She was there again. She looked up and blinked. "Oh," she said. "It's you." I smiled. "It is." She flushed. I heard what happened. I'm so sorry. I didn't know. You were just doing your job," I said. "It wasn't your fault." She paused. "You look different." "I feel different." Before I left, I mailed a single letter, not to Marion, not to the court, to myself. It was the letter I'd written months ago, folded and sealed now, with the words, "Keep this written in my own hand." Sometimes we forget how far we've come, and sometimes we need a reminder, a breadcrumb back to ourselves. On the way home, I passed by Lucy's flower shop. She saw me through the window and waved me in. "You made the paper again," she said, handing me a clipping. It was a short column, not scandal, just commentary. Elder fraud is real, but so is resilience. My name wasn't even in it. Still, I smiled. "I keep thinking about everything you've been through," she said. "And you're still here, still upright. Still in one piece." "Not the same piece," I said. "But yes, still here." As I was leaving, she stopped me. "Nora," she asked, "if you could say one thing to someone who's going through the same thing, what would it be?" I thought for a moment. Then I said, "Don't wait to be saved. Save yourself." And that's what I want you to know if you're still reading. If you've ever been taken for granted, dismissed, silenced, don't wait for someone to come fix it. Start walking. Start asking. Start writing things down. They might try to write you out, but you get to write back. And if this story meant something to you, if it made you feel seen or strong or simply not alone, then share it. Leave a comment. Pass it on. Not for me. For the next woman. The one who's just now realizing they tried to bury her and forgot she was a seed.